Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of the Golden Years Retirement Community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show, we'll revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Ike Eisenmann and Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Pop Culture Retro. I'm one of your hosts, Jonathan Rosen, along with Ike Eisenmann, and today we are thrilled to welcome a TV icon who starred in one of the most beloved sitcoms of all time, My Three Sons, as well as being a producer, director, and artist. Please help us welcome Stanley Livingston. Stanley, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. Good to see you.
Well, to start with, you began performing so young. I mean, you were 4 years old when you performed with a group called the Water Babies, and appeared on the show You Asked for It. How did that come about?
Well, my parents moved to California, 1948. I came along in 1950, and early on, she wanted me to know how to swim. I think there was a drowning in the family.
Wow.
I would have had a cousin, but apparently he drowned. She didn't want that to happen to me. She took me to a swim school in Hollywood. And at the age of 2 years old, I was getting swimming lessons. By the time I was 3, I was swimming, diving off a high board. And
Wow.
the lady that ran the swimming pool was very entrepreneurial. She had a lot of kids coming there anyway, but she had a porthole cut in the side of the pool. And it was about a 4-foot, probably very thick piece of glass. And along the side of the pool, you could go down some steps and film people underwater. So she put together these little shows of us kids riding bicycles and toy cars and swings underwater. And she got the newspaper to come down and cover it, which gave her publicity. And then it sort of became a sensation. All these period magazines, Look, Life, Vogue, came down and did spreads on these kids, and we were called Water Babies. And finally, You Asked for It got interested. I'm sure she was probably the one that wrote in and requested it, but what the heck. And after that, a lot of Hollywood type people started bringing their kids there to learn how to swim.
Wow.
And, kids of producers, directors, agents, and there was an agent that came and she saw me and kind of befriended my mom and thought I might make a good candidate to be a kid in showbiz, a child actor. I was, cute looking, had blonde hair, was pretty extroverted, and, wasn't afraid of adults and would talk to them. So, she decided to give it a go. And, I started working. Of course, in the beginning of your career, like anybody's career, you probably work as an extra most of the time. Your first
Right. Oh, yeah.
few, or maybe your first 100 jobs might be, but it's a good way to get acclimated to what goes on a set, how the director works, how the producer works, what's going to be expected of you. And I did a bunch of shows as an extra, and one of them was Ozzie and Harriet.
Oh, we're going to ask about that for sure. Yes.
Okay, yeah. I didn't know if
yeah,
you want
no,
me to
definitely.
keep going into that. All right, so I went out on an episode of Ozzie and Harriet, and the storyline was Ozzie was selling Christmas trees in his backyard to make extra money. And so he's standing there with a prospective client and showing him the trees, and it looks like a forest. And all of a sudden, about 6 or 8 little kids come out of the forest with their backpacks and sleeping bags, and I was one of them. And anyway, we shot it a couple times, and then he took me aside and said, "Hey, could you say this line?" And he said, "What I want you to do is just come out like you did before, but I'm going to put a piece of tape on the floor right here, but don't look down at it. Just be looking at me when you get there and say this line." Which the line was, "Sure was mighty good camping in there, Mr. Nelson," and then turn and walk away. So I did it, and I guess I did it well enough. And then he decided to move the camera closer, and I got my first close up. And before the end of the day, he came up to my mom and said, "Gee, I'd love to have him back again as a regular kid."
Amazing.
And Right, could you leave your information with my secretary in the front office? And we did. And a couple months later, he called me back to do another show. And this time I had more dialogue. And
Huh.
that went on and on from about the end of 1950, I guess 56 to about 1960 when I started My Three Sons. So, and by the end of it, he was writing episodes featuring me in it. It's like there was no other kid, it was just me. He wrote one where they had a pony. Can't remember all of them. There was a football one, and there was another one where this was during the late 1950s, which was the first UFO craze. And they did a show about a UFO sighting, and I was in that. And at the end of the episode, I run into a Martian. So, yeah, crazy good times. But yeah, because of Ozzie and Harriet, I got going. I started doing other TV shows because of that. I started getting movies. I did a film called The Bonnie Parker Story with Dorothy Provine. I did, let me see, Rally Around the Flag Boys with Paul Newman and Joanne. Right, and along came Please Don't Eat the Daisies with Doris Day, David Niven. So yeah, I was, by the time I was 9 years old, I had amassed a pretty impressive list of credits and in some high profile, A-list movies and good TV shows. And they were coming up with a TV show called My Three Sons. They were looking for, three boys. And anyway, I had just done a pilot too for Jackie Cooper. And my agent sent the film. In those days, when we said, "Can I look at your reel?" we weren't talking about a videotape, and we weren't talking about a DVD or downloading media. It was actually a film reel of 16 millimeter film. And, if they had a screening room, they could watch it. Or normally my parents would rent a theater after midnight and invite people to come see it then. And anyway, based on Skippy and my performance in that, I was literally hired the next day to play Chip Douglas.
Oh, really?
That was the one I did for Jackie Cooper. My name actually in the lead up credits was above the title.
Wow.
And literally I'm in, I think, all but two small scenes. So I had the burden of carrying the other half of the dialogue, and there was some demanding scenes there, very emotional. I had to cry and, do some pretty crazy stuff. So anyway, I could see why I was getting hired based on that reel. Of course, it's wouldn't do me a darn bit of good now, my age. But back then, it did pretty good. It worked magic for me. It got me My Three Sons. It almost got me a movie that I was up for simultaneously. Like I said, I was pretty popular as a kid actor by then, and I was up for a movie. They were making, I think it was MGM, was doing a remake of Tom Sawyer. Oh, no, it was Huckleberry Finn. And I was up for the lead in that. Originally, I think it was supposed to be a musical, and so I wasn't being considered. And when they got, whatever reason, decided to make it a non-musical, then suddenly they wanted me. And that was based on that reel. And anyway, I had an agent at the time, and my parents didn't know what to do, whether to accept the movie or accept the TV series. Well, the agent, being the wise old pro that she was, went, "Let me see. If he does a movie, he's going to get one paycheck. And who knows what will happen with that movie." Of course, Tony Randall was in it. And I think the kid that finally got the part of Huckleberry Finn was Eddie Hodges, who was popular then too. He was in A Hole in the Head with Frank Sinatra. But yeah, they wanted me, and we didn't know. The agent said, one check, or if he does a TV series, there's at least 39 episodes, which means 39 paycheck. And maybe it'll go on to year two, or possibly last 2 or 3 years. So she decided for us that it would be better to accept the series, and that would be more popular. And TV in those days too, though it didn't have the luster of being in an A-list movie. That was kind of another realm of show business. To be in a TV series back then was pretty amazing. TV, I don't want to say it was brand new, but it's only 10 years old, and wildly popular, and it put the movie industry really back on its heels. this was here to stay, and audiences weren't coming to their theaters in droves anymore. They're staying home watching TV. So so that's how I got into My Three Sons. It's funny how I got Skippy though. I was doing Ozzie and Harriet, and during the periods when I wasn't shooting, being a precocious kid, I'd walk around onto other people's sound stages just to see what they were doing. And next to us there was a horse working, so I'd go over there and play with the horse, and the guy showed me how to brush it, and he'd put me up on it and kind of lead me around by the reins, and I got to sit on a horse. And I was feeding it carrots, and I thought that was so cool. And yeah, the horse didn't work every day, but when he was there and I'd see the trailer out front that he arrived in. That was his limousine. Yeah, I'd go out and play it. Well, I didn't know because it wasn't the show that I watched, but that was Mr. Ed.
Oh my!
So they're playing with Mr. Ed and didn't know it. Anyway, across from us, during the lunch hour, they'd open all the big soundstage doors, and immediately across from ours was another soundstage, and they had the door open. There was a dog working on that show, and I went over and I talked to the trainer, and he'd let me. I was obsessed with dogs when I was young, still am. And one day when I was playing with the dog, this older guy came up to me and started talking to me. He goes, "What are you doing here?" And I go, "Well, I'm just here playing with this dog." And anyway, I stood up, shook his hand. So I think he was impressed with that. And talked to me for about 10 minutes. And he said, "I'd like to meet your mom." And I went, "Geez, am I in trouble?" And he goes, No, son, you're not in trouble." He goes, "But I would like to meet your mom." So I said, "Okay." So I took him across the street to stage 5 where Ozzie and Harriet was being filmed. This was at General Service Studios in Hollywood. And introduced him to my mom, and then quickly walked away because I thought I was in trouble. He just didn't want to tell me. So I kind of kept my eye on them talking there for a substantial amount of time, and then he finally left. So I thought, well, I'm not being punished, so I guess I did okay. Well, 3 months later, this guy who my mom talked to went away, wrote a TV pilot for me that he was going to produce and direct, and it was Jackie Cooper, who I didn't know who Jackie Cooper. I knew him as the Little Rascals. But, when you're a kid, you don't imagine people being grown up. He was probably about 32, 33 then. And, I would have only known him as the kid in the show. And so anyway, in December of 1958, I had just turned 8 years old. We shot this TV pilot, which never sold, but it became a showpiece for me to show around and get movies and TV shows. So, yeah. Thank God for Jackie Cooper.
Well, going back to Ozzie and Harriet, I mean, the show had already been on for several years. So had you already been a fan of the show when you started?
I knew what it was. I can't say I was a fan per se. I liked it. It was mildly humorous. But I think by that point, Dave and Ricky were already in their late teens. And, it didn't, kids relate to kids. We want to see our own ilk up there. So if there was a 10-year-old on it or a 9-year-old, I would have probably been more inclined to watch it. So when I came on the show, I think that was the idea that Ricky had, that Ozzie had, that, I want to keep the boys on the show, but, we need new blood here. Let's have a bunch of neighborhood kids that we can kind of populate the show with, and they'll do what Dave and Ricky once did. And it was actually right around that time, 57, 58, that Rick's music career got going. And, it was debuted on the Ozzie and Harriet. Well, that, Ozzie and Harriet had already been on for 5 years. And not that it was waning in the ratings, but, with the injection of having like the other Elvis in your, crappy TV series, the show became like another sensation. They had a completely different demographic. It wasn't mom and pop watching the show. It was now, 12, 15, 18-year-old girls watching the show. And, I was there. I think I might have been in that episode, or either they shot one of the music videos at the end of the show. That's how they did it. They would have the show, and then they would say, "Oh, Rick's playing at a sock hop," And on the stage, there was another stage built that kind of had a stage on it. And they would import maybe, 50 young girls, and they'd all be standing down here like my fingers are. And Rick would be up on the stage singing. And I remember he sang Poor Little Fool. That was the first song I ever heard them do. Of course, he Milli Vanilli'd it. It was already pre-recorded. It wasn't done live.
Right.
And they had the Jordanaires. That was his backup group, Elvis's backup group. And, I know I got the bug. In fact, there's a picture of me with Rick. He's got his guitar with him. I've got my gun because I got involved in the movie industry when I was young because I was watching Gene Autry and Roy Rogers, and I only wanted to be in show business because I could see you could ride a horse and you get to shoot a gun. And so I wanted to be a cowboy, and all my attire when I wasn't working was like cowboy attire. And literally, I think one of the first jobs I have, if not the first, was to do a Roy Rogers toy commercial. It was a toy lariat. And, he's trying to show me how to do it, and he's spinning it, and then finally he throws it, and it goes over me, and he yanks me in at the end of the commercial. And so I thought I hit pay dirt, because like I said, I only wanted to be on TV because I wanted to be a cowboy. Well, that was the only cowboy thing I did. Everything else, I was just a neighborhood kid. So I was kind of disappointed for a long time. Finally, I hit pay dirt though in between seasons of My Three Sons. I think it was during the third and fourth season. A director called and wanted to see me for this movie that was about to be shot. That starred literally everybody who was anybody in Hollywood. It just didn't have John Wayne like most Westerns. It had John Wayne, Jimmy Stewart, Gregory Peck, Henry Fonda, George Papard, Debbie Reynolds, Thelma Ritter. It was Carl Malden. It starred everybody.
Were you just in awe, like looking around?
Well, it was called How the West Is Won.
Right.
It was going to be a Cinerama film, and I got cast in that. So I'm probably in one of the best Westerns of all time, 3-hour movie, and shot it was the last Cinerama movie shot. So it kind of has that distinction too, which
what are some of your memories from that movie, being with all of those icons?
It was great. The people I was probably closest to was Debbie Reynolds, who played my great aunt, George Papard, who played my dad, Carolyn Jones, who later went on to be in The Munsters, and she was in, I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember King Creole with Elvis.
Of course,
she was the girl that he wanted to be with in that. And so it was great working with all those people. It was kind of I wasn't intimidated by it. When you're a kid, you just don't have that fear factor. I think that maybe being an adult would have been terrorizing to work with people of that stature. I'd already worked with Fred MacMurray, who, when My Three Cents came about, was the highest paid actor in Hollywood. He had just come off a bunch of major movies. Up to that time, he probably had done 50 or 100 movies. But just prior to My Three Cents, he did The Caine Mutiny with Humphrey Bogart. He ended up doing The Apartment with Jack Lemmon. Then there was The Absent-Minded Professor, which starred him at Disney. The Shaggy Dog, which I always felt was the basis for My Three Sons. That's where the idea for My Three Sons, I think, came about. So he was a working actor, a living legend, but I only knew him probably best from The Shaggy Dog and best from The Absent-Minded Professor. And they made a sequel, I think, the following year called The Son of Flubber. So he was a very busy actor. And when I met these other guys, it was just par for the course. You still talk to them like they're regular people, and I didn't think, hey, that's Jimmy Stewart. Hey, that's Henry Fonda. They were just guys working on the set.
Before we dive into My Three Sons, I just want, you mentioned before you Don't Eat the Daisies with Doris Day and David Niven. Were you aware of them as well when you went in?
I was more aware of Doris Day than David Niven. Of course, my parents would show me a movie or try and get me to a movie that he was in so I'd know who he'd be. And yeah, he was, a nice guy, not on the same level that Doris Day was. She was actually hands-on friendly. I mean, we'd hang out with her, eat lunch with her, play cards with her, play horseshoes with her. And I think she had learned, if you're going to have kids in a movie, they can't just come on the set and, hi, I'm your mom. Now, okay, action, start doing your line. She wanted some sort of camaraderie there. So she took the time to befriend us and, to have a little bit of rapport. And I think that served her well. And yeah, she's a very nice lady. And her son, Terry Melcher, was about our age too. So he would come down to the set and hang out. And yeah, we had a great time doing that movie. But yeah, David, not to say he was aloof, but he just, when we weren't working, wasn't playing horseshoes. Let's put it that. He was probably having a martini in his trailer.
Well, I just wanted to know also that, so you started working there at My Three Sons. So does your life start to change at that point a little bit? I mean, because beforehand, you've done a lot of guest spots, but now you're like a regular on a sitcom.
Yeah, well, that was the distinction, I think, between me and other child actors at that time. Until My Three Sons, I was like everybody else. I was just a journeyman child actor, and you would go from show to show to show. That's how you would work and make your living. One week you do this, next week you do that. Or if you lucked out and got in movies, I seem to be getting a lot of movies. Right up to the point where I got My Three Sons. So all my friends who were on various series, like Jay North, who was Dennis the Menace, Tony Dow, who was on Leave It to Beaver, Jerry Mathers, almost anybody that was on a big show, they would, in some cases, until they got the series, go from show to show to show. Once we were locked into a TV series, we could not do other TV shows. So that's why my credits in outside things kind of stopped after 1960. I could only do movies. So yeah, I couldn't, we would get calls all the time to do other TV shows because you're like a hot kid actor and then hot teen actor, but I was precluded from doing other TV shows because they were worried about a conflict with the sponsors.
Oh,
so
wow.
that wasn't done. So instead of having, say, 100 credits in shows between 1960 and 1975, I got 380 credits on My Three Sons. So it amounts to the same thing. You're working and I was gainfully employed. My friends all had when they did a TV show, they would have to worry whether they would ever work again, because you never knew if the last show you did could be your last show. Yeah, and even with us on My Three Sons, the last season of the show could have been the last season. We never found out to maybe a month before that we were coming back and doing another season. We were under contract and an option if they wanted to exercise it, but there was always that fear they wouldn't call. And then one day, 12 years later, they didn't call. We all got telegrams saying, "Hey, nice knowing you. Don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out." Yeah, that's how it works.
That's an amazing run for any show. But the show was filmed.
Yeah, who knew?
Yeah,
who knew?
Yeah, exactly.
And then the crazy part is I always had the idea that the people at the network forgot it was running. It just stayed on. It wasn't on because anybody was watching. It was on because the network were either forgot that they had left the show running, or nobody wanted to tell Fred MacMurray it's over. That was the other thing. But no, I mean it was a great show. It had high ratings literally to the end. It probably wouldn't have gone off. There was kind of a little catch that happened in 1971 where the FCC mandated that networks that owned shows couldn't own them and exhibit them anymore. It was antitrust issues, and so they were given the edict they could keep one show that they were producing and exhibiting, but the rest had to either be terminated or sold to producers. Well, in our case, what producer is going to buy a 12-year-old show? So they decided to quietly euthanize us, and yeah, we went out with high ratings, and instead of we going out with a whimper, we went out, kind of in an illustrious way. So,
wow. Well, the show was filmed at Desilu. Did you get to see Lucille Ball at all?
oh yes, all the time. She was on the soundstage next to us. This wasn't I Love Lucy. This was the Lucy show, but she came in. I think I forget it. I think it was the second year we were there, and they took over the soundstage next to us, which was kind of fun because Bill Frawley was on the show, and he and Vivian got to continue their fake spat and yell profanity at each other, whenever they would. I mean, it was a perfect situation too, because it was kind of I don't know what you would call it, like an entryway into the soundstage. It was like a little alcove, and both doors opened into that alcove, and so everybody was just waiting for them to open simultaneously, and Bill would come out of one and Vivian would come out of the other, and they'd run literally smack into each other face to face. And Bill would usually shout out some expletive, or and then she would reciprocate. But I think a lot of that was just tomfoolery. I mean, they knew people like to see them spat, so they did.
Well, on the show, Fred MacMurray famously had that abbreviated schedule for filming. So what was that like for you and the rest of the cast to work around? Was it tough? I mean, for a kid actor especially, to do that?
No problem at all. Zero problem. I'd been on other shoots where things were shot out of order. And even on a regular show, a non-Fred MacMurray show, they would try to shoot the script as much in order as humanly possible. If there was 3 scenes in a living room and it was at the beginning of the show and one in the middle and one at the end, they would shoot those out. So you were already kind of doing that. But on My Three Sons, it was kind of to an extreme. The way it worked is Fred would come in first 2-3 months, and he would work from 8 in the morning till, I think it was originally 6 o'clock, but they backed it up to 5 o'clock. So he could go home, eat dinner, see his kids, be with his wife. And how they did that was they would shoot all the scenes with him. He would be in every single take. And they'd shoot the master and Fred's close up. And then after 6 o'clock, they would come back to those scenes. Of course, this didn't affect me because I was a minor and I couldn't work after 6 o'clock. But for Bill Frawley, for Tim Considine and Don Grady, or anybody else working on the show, they would come back and do pick up all their close-ups, or as much as they could, and then let them go. But so Fred would work for 3 months. They would shoot out probably about half the shows, his stuff for half the shows. Then he would leave for the summer. He'd be gone for 3 months. And that's when we shot all the scenes that Fred wasn't in, or Fred was about to walk into, if he was going to walk into it. When they said cut, we'd all freeze. They'd have a Polaroid guy come in, snap a picture exactly where we were at, what we were wearing. And 3 months later, when Fred would come back, we'd put those clothes on, kind of get relatively in those positions. They'd have a close-up walk of Fred opening the door coming in, so they would have a slight cutaway from the master where we were, so it would all match. And then we continue the scene on. And that's the way we did it. At the end of summer, he'd come back again for about another 2 or 3 months and finish off the season. And that's how we did it for 12 years. So, we were like the 3 dwarves down in the mine. Fred was there and would go on, lovely vacations and voyages in Hawaii and wherever with his family. And we'd be down there toiling in the mine for 3 months without.
Let's talk about Fred MacMurray, because he portrayed this warm fatherly figure, but I've read many things that he was very tough to get close to. So what are your memories of him and your relationship with him like?
Yeah, on the set, he wasn't tough. If you came up and talked to him, he'd talk to you. Everybody addressed him as Mr. MacMurray, and I don't know why. I started calling him Fred, and he didn't seem to mind. And he used my stage name more than he did. He'd always just say Chipper, call me Chipper. So I don't know, maybe that was easier for him to remember, but it was kind of I think a term of endearment for him. But he had a life outside of, My Three Sons. And, he was, like I said, one of the biggest actors of all time, and certainly at that moment in time. And he and June would, they had their social circle that, included Henry Fonda and Jimmy Stewart and, people that they would have over to their house. I had my friends from the pool and school. Fred had Gregory Peck, people like that. So I wasn't anywhere in his league, but we didn't really socialize with him very much, but that's understandable. Who gonna have a cocktail party and invite some 10, 12-year-old kid over?
Yeah.
As I got older, then I would run into him at functions once, I got my bearing, and outside of the soundstage, would go off and try and do things for publicity or events. Oop, there goes my light. What's that all about? Hope that doesn't happen again. Anyway, as we got older, we became friendlier and friendlier, off stage. And, Barry and I did some plays around the country. And every once in a while, he would seem to end up in the same city where we were at a golf tournament. Fred loved playing golf. And, people would host him. And, he'd call us up and go, hey, you guys want to go out to dinner? Or you want to have drinks or whatever? And, so he was, more open. Of course, we were, in our late 20s, early 30s then. And he's a great guy. I wish I had worked on the show at that point with him, because when you're a kid, you're just doing your job and you're not quite so concerned with, somebody's career, or what was it like to work with this person, or how did you find out you were a gifted actor, or who did you study? The kind of questions I would have loved to, been able to ask him.
Oh, for sure. Well, William Frawley was really kind of pushed off the show. What can you tell us about that time, and how did it affect the rest of the cast?
Well, I don't want to scare you guys. See this face here? This person is the exact same age as Bub or William Frawley the first year of My Three Sons. So
oh, wow.
wrap your head around that one.
Wow.
Yeah. Maybe I have a groovier look or a little more hair than Bub did, but he was a really fun guy. And I think the pleasure for me in doing My Three Sons, when I found out he was going to be the grandfather. Because me, like every other kid, we'd play hooky at 9:00 when I Love Lucy came on. And, we watched the show. And my favorite character on the show was Bill Frawley. I just liked how he was cranky and acerbic and, all the things that Bill was. And I thought, wow, this guy's going to be. Well, in real life, I didn't know either of my grandfathers. They had recently passed away, so I never met them, got to know them. So I wanted a grandfather. So I made it my mission when My Three Sons started, go, this guy's going to become my grandfather, whether he likes it or not. And, I was cute and charming. And I think Bill was more of a W.C. Fields kind of person in real life, get those kids, get those animals away from me. But we bonded. And, after that, like on the soundstage, when I wasn't in school 3 hours a day, I was usually hanging out with Bill, playing cards, playing checkers. Occasionally he would shut the door and give me a cigar to smoke. And we went to lunch every day at Nicodel's restaurant for 5 years.
Wow.
He'd buy me a drink every noon. Of course, I had to go with my guardian, and as soon as my drink came, he'd order 2 drinks, one for him, one for me. I'd look over, I see my guardian going like that. So when Bill wasn't looking, I'd have to pick up my little glass and dump it under the table on the leg of the table and tell Bill, oh, that was great. And he, in this day and age, he would be in a lot of trouble. You think about how people are and political correctness. Bill, if you looked in the dictionary, it said, politically not correct, there would have been a picture of Bill Frawley there. Cursing around kids, yelling at people. It was great.
So that really affected the whole cast when he was let go?
It did, from an emotional side. I was so close to him, and what had happened was he started having health issues in those days. There wasn't too much they could do about it. He was having heart problems, and like all of us, every year we had to go in for a physical before production started, so that they could get insurance on us. And the doctor who examined Bill goes, I can't find a heartbeat here. And this guy's like, I don't know. He goes, I can't in good conscience write out that he's okay. And they talked to the insurance company. The insurance company said no. Had we shot the other way around, meaning had we shot, started on show number 1, that went to 2 to 3, it would have worked because we could have shot out the show. So if he passed away during show 7, they would have lost show 7. The way we were shooting, we would have lost, 39, half of 39 shows. So, yeah, it'd have been 18, 19 shows there. They would have gone right down the toilet. We'd had to start over with a different character.
Did you feel a difference in tone on the set between Frawley and William Demarest?
Yeah, Bill Frawley was a completely different, crazy guy character, and had everybody in stitches like the whole time with his antics, and breaking up everybody during a take. He would just break into a song and dance, and they would just have to let him do a cut. We go, okay, Bill, this time don't do that. We got to get this take. And sometimes he would accommodate. Sometimes he'd just go into another song or whatever. So yeah, when they weren't bringing him back, and they brought in Bill Demarest to replace him. It was quite a blow for Bill, and he did pass away not long after that. So yeah, Bill. I mean, if I look at it as an adult and look back on Bill Frawley versus Bill Demarest, Bill Demarest was a much, much bigger character actor than Bill Frawley ever was. Bill Frawley basically came to note, I think, during the Lucy, I Love Lucy era, became a beloved character, where Bill Demarest, his career went back to the beginning of he's in the jazz scene, for God's sakes, and he worked with I think he's in every single Preston Sturges movie. So he was in all these A-list films from back there as he usually played the grumpy detective, the best friend of the main guy, the crusty. So he made a career, kind of playing those kind of characters, and so did Bill Frawley. But I would have said, in the scheme of things, Bill Demarest was on the A list, and Bill Frawley was probably on the B list till I Love Lucy came along. And the other thing, when it happened, I was about 13. I guess it was about 14, and it really hit me emotionally, that Bill wasn't going to be there. And I remember I was mad at the studio and the producers that they didn't bring him back when I found out why. And, it's a hard thing to get over. It's like, you're not having, my best friend is not going to be here, and you replace them with this guy. So at first, I don't think I was as cordial to Bill Demarest. I did my scenes, but, I didn't warm up to him. It took me probably, some months to get over it and finally accept him. And, we finally did get along. And in later years, I got along with Bill Demarest the same way I got along with Frawley. Had respect for his career, and and he was just a completely different guy. It just wasn't as crazy and wild, but he was fun.
Yeah. Well, what reason did Tim Considine give for wanting to leave? Because eventually he wasn't even mentioned anymore.
Yeah, well, that was also the 5th year, or maybe it was the beginning of the 6th year. I forget now. Getting old. Anyway, yeah, he directed an episode. I think it was the 4th or 5th year. And, it really kind of turned him on to direct it. He wrote an episode, and I think he wanted to do more directing. And when the season came back, it must have been coming back for the 6th season, because his contract would have been up. We all had 5-year contracts back then. And he said, hey, look, I'll come back, but I want to direct half the episodes. And the producers just didn't think that was viable. I think they ran it by Fred MacMurray, who said, hey, I really don't want to be directed by a 23-year-old. And how would we do this? We'd have to shoot 23 shows straight out. Like 19 shows straight out so he could do it. And then bring in another director for the other, and then go back to the whole process of shooting the MacMurray method. Or are we not shooting the MacMurray? So it just caused the whole, problem. And they said to Tim, no, we can't do that. And so they said, we'd love to have you come back. And he said, well, it's either or. And he said, see you later. And that was it. He came back for one episode, and he got married to his sweetheart on the show, Meredith McRae. And they drove off, I assume, into the Twilight Zone because nobody ever heard from them again. They must have run into picked up Rod Serling somewhere along the road, and that was that. Ended up in that diner. I don't know. We never heard from him again. Of course, now off stage, it's a different story. I was friends with Tim, and Tim was pretty friendly to Barry and I. And on Saturdays, sometimes he'd come pick us up, and we go to his mom's house in Beverly Hills and go swimming, hang out for the day, and go to drive-ins and eat lunch, or dinner, which was a big deal if you were a kid eating a drive-in. And he's just all around nice guy. We kind of became pseudo, younger brothers for Tim. So, and my relationship with the brothers, aside from my own, who's my real brother, I had a very close relationship to Tim. He passed away last year, but literally, we saw each other, quite a few times during the year. Last 10, 12 years, we were going to the Indy 500 every year together. I'd always go to Tim's house on January 1st, which was his birthday. Did that for like 30 some years. So I was probably closer to Tim than even Don Grady, in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Well, so your brother came on the show, then Barry came on. Was that something that you loved back then, or was it like kind of too much actual family interfering with your?
No, not really. Ironically, Barry and I had worked together a bunch of times before that. Actually, when I did Rally Around the Flag, Barry was in the movie. The first day of shooting, he got fired. But if you watch the actual movie, there's one scene that they didn't cut out of the movie because they're holding him upside down by his feet and shaking because he swallowed pennies. So it's Joanne Woodward, and I forgot who the character actor was. So that stayed in. I guess they figured nobody would notice, but Barry wasn't watching the TV screen the way the director wanted him to. And the director was getting irritated. By lunch hour, they sent him to an ophthalmologist who came back with the report. He has a crossed eye, so it's never going to look like he's looking where you want him to look. And by 1 o'clock, I had a new brother, a guy named Ralph Osborne III, replaced Barry Livingston. The last Ozzie and Harriet that I did, because my parents had to tell Ozzie that I couldn't come back anymore. This would be the last show because My Three Sons was starting up, and I was going to be forbidden from doing other TV shows. Anyway, Barry was in that episode. They cast Barry in it too as my brother, playing my brother in that show as well. And anyway, when I left, they kept Barry on. He was really cute, had the glasses, buck teeth, the Mo Howard haircut, and Ozzie just loved him. And so from 1960 to 64, 65, Barry, was doing Ozzie and Harriet like I did at one time. So, he came onto that. The other predicament the show was in when Tim decided to depart was the name of the show was My Three Sons. We're down to two sons, two brothers. We got to do something in a hurry. Well, by then, Barry came onto the show and was playing a friend of mine. He replaced an actor named Ricky Allen, who was playing a character named Sudsy the first 2 or 3 years. And they kind of weaved Barry's character into it. And they decided to replace Ricky with Barry. And then 2 years later, it was a fortuitous hiring when Tim left. We needed a third son in a hurry. And hey, why not this guy right here? And so Barry got hired, and they wrote a whole story about how that came about, where he was a foster child. His foster parents were leaving the country, and they weren't allowed to bring a foster child out of the country. And he needs a family in a hurry, and the Douglas family steps up to the plate. It also added some romance into the story because it was a social worker who had to get close to us ahead of time to make sure, we weren't like Jeffrey Dahmers or something eating people. And so there was a flirtatious romance with Vera Miles and Fred MacMurray that lasted about 5 episodes till Ernie was officially adopted. And that's how Barry came on the show. And if you missed those 5 episodes, you wouldn't know what the hell happened.
Oh my God.
It's like, wait a minute, they replaced this 20-year-old with like a 10-year-old? What is that?
Well, towards the end of
And
the
at
series,
least
you.
I'm
Oh,
bewitched.
sorry.
At least I'm. Oh, I was gonna say, at least I'm bewitched. The guy that replaced, the first Darren kind of
Yeah.
looked like the second, and that was a real head scratcher too. You go, wait a minute, the guy's like a little different. What happened? But
Well,
yeah, my three sons,
it's
very odd.
extraordinary how they can actually do that and somehow manage to get away with it. I mean,
Oh
it's
yeah, yeah.
to me that that always impresses me greatly. But
Well, usually
toward.
you're out, and they just don't replace you, like Pernell Roberts from Bonanza, or there's been other actors. I mean, he was one of the luckiest guys ever. If you walk off a network TV show, you usually never work again because the networks don't want you. They're afraid they're going to hire and you're going to walk off again.
Yeah.
But he ended up later getting that Trapper John, so that
Right.
that blew me away. The fact that he got a second chance at having a career like that.
Mm. Well, towards the end of the series, you started appearing in less episodes. Was that something that you wanted, or was it somehow
I think there was
organic?
just so many people to be fair with everybody, so it could rotate and have more episodes. Yeah, because now we had Tina Cole that was there. They had the triplets. I mean, it was just way too many people,
Cramming.
and I wasn't even sure I was coming back for that last season, and they kind of knew that. So I think preemptively they were writing some episodes in case I didn't show. My
Hmm.
contract had expired, and I had an offer to go do the Virginian, and had a new character they were going to bring in. Again, my mind flashed back to when I was working with Ward Wright. I go, hey, didn't I get in this business to be a cowboy? Well, here's my chance, and to be seen differently as an actor too, as an adult actor, not Chip Douglas, and wear cowboy outfit and be I don't know, a gunslinger or whatever the heck I would have been in the show. But when push came to shove, I had to make my mind up, and I just couldn't desert the ship. It was sort of like Don had left, and I knew that, and I go, what's going to happen to the show if I leave? It's going to be like one son. So I decided just to throw the towel and go down with the ship. So I went, chose
Well,
my three sons, and ironically, the Virginian, I would have done that episode of it, and it got canceled the next year anyway. I think for the same reason it was owned by the network. So
which begs the question now, toward the end there, were you upset when it got canceled, or did you kind of feel it run its course a little bit already?
it was a mixed feeling. Part of me wanted to see what, as an adult, what life had to hold for me as an actor out there. But actually, to be honest, by that point, for probably 3 years before that, I got interested in what was going on behind the camera. And
No, we're gonna ask.
I was already in college, and I was taking cinema classes, editing classes, and all this stuff. So yeah, I think I really saw myself going in a different direction, and directing is kind of what I wanted to do, and producing. And it was a great place to learn because we had all these great camera guys, and, DP cinematographers who,
Mhm.
they're doing just a crappy little TV show, but at one time, some of them had won Academy Awards for big feature films, and that's
Mhm.
who were doing all the behind the scenes work on the shows. So, I got to learn, all about cameras from these guys who were amazing camera people. Back one of the classes that I had was taught by the guy who was the head of the camera department at CBS, guy named Peter Gibbons. And so the people I was working with the daytime, we were teaching the classes at nighttime. Learned how to edit. I'd go up when they were scheduling, learn how they do the schedules. Why is this scheduled this way? And got all the tricks of the trade. So by the time I was about 18, I knew how to shoot, I knew how to do sound, I knew how to edit, and I formed a production company with a guy that I'd met in college, and we started shooting stuff, whatever we could get. Commercials, PSAs, music video, you name it.
That's
just
First Team Productions.
well, it wasn't that back then, no. First Team's been around, I guess, about 15, 20 years. Before that, it was Premier Entertainment for about 5 years. And I don't even remember what I was called when I had other partners. I've had bunches of partners over the years. So
Good. Well, can you
and
tell us a
then
little bit about First Team? What does First Team do now?
yeah, well, we've done a lot of stuff, feature films. We did it was co-production between me and another company in 2012. We actually produced a Cinerama film, if you can believe that.
Wow.
The guy that I was working with restored a Cinerama camera. There were only, I think, 3 of them left, and they cannibalized one of them to get one of them up and running. And did it because it was going to be the 50th anniversary of Cinerama. So we made a film called In the Picture. And at that point in time, I think it was 2012, they were going to have the first Cinerama Film Festival. And they got every single film that was ever shot in Cinerama, including a Renault commercial for the Renault car. And anyway, we had just finished the film, so we kicked off the Cinerama Film Festival with In the Picture, and Leonard Maltin was there, and I was like, oh my God, I hope he writes a decent review. And he did. He gave us a glowing review. It was kind of recursive because we had references to other Cinerama films in there. In fact, I had talked to Debbie Reynolds, and she appeared in it. And then the end of the film ends up in the Cinerama Dome, where I'm watching myself, I think, on screen in How the West Was Won. And, so it's all these weird picture in a picture in a picture kind of thing. It was very cute. And so it kicked off the festival. And then, over the years, music videos, like I said, we did a feature film called Checkers, done TV pilots. And then the thing that's probably eaten the last 8 years out of my life, I had a personal project that I wanted to do, that I wanted to pay the industry back in some way, because I've had this 68-year-long career in the industry. And being an actor at heart, I saw this decades ago, how actors would go to school to become actors. They learned the art and craft of acting, and then it would all seem to fall apart as they attempted to get into the industry. It didn't matter where they went to the actor studio, Yale or Harvard, UCLA, USC, a lot of the great schools to learn at, the actor studio. But the problem wasn't acting. These people are all really good actors, whether they're in front of the camera or up on stage. The problem was they didn't know anything about the business.
Yeah.
How the business actually works. It's like any business. You can be the greatest chef in the world and you're so creative and have that. But if you don't know the business principles of running a restaurant, you're going to be out of business very shortly. It's not going to work. And acting is very similar to that, in that it's a 2-component business. Yes, there's the creative side, the acting, and the craft, but there is a business side. And what you find out once you get involved, the business side is everything. Because if you don't know how to do that, you're never going to get to do the acting side. You're going to do it very little, or you're not going to understand. So I thought somebody should do a program to teach this. And, I checked around and realized none of the colleges or universities offer a very comprehensive program in teaching actors the business part of it. And so, over the years, I used to moan and groan about it like everybody else, but having done it for 30, 40 years and worked as an actor and worked as a director, a producer, a casting person, cameraman, a sound man, every capacity you could work in, really gave me a unique point of view of actors. And I thought, well, I was talking to a friend of mine, and I said, somebody should do something. I didn't say, why don't you do it? You got a production company. You got cameras, gear. All these great people. And I started giving that a second thought. And anyway, I finally decided to do something about it, and produced a 10-hour long series called The Actor's Journey. And it totally is focused on the business side of acting. It's not just the 4 or 5 things that are taught, which is get a reel, get a resume, get some headshots, try and get in Screen Actors Guild, and hopefully you luck out. So yeah, we ended up there's 65 segments in there that cover 65 distinct topics that are related to the business side. So it's very comprehensive. I went to all my friends that, and peers and people that I've worked with or knew over the years and said, hey, how would you like to be a part of it? This needs to be taught. How would you like to be in it, teach it? So, yeah, I went to a lot of, people that I knew, Henry Winkler, Michael York, were some of the actors. I mean, a lot of amazing actors that are in this. Directors, I had Richard Donner, who had directed all the Lethal Weapon movies, The Omen, Superman. So what I was trying to do was put together the program, and while we're teaching these topics, to not have it just be actors, but to have the topic looked at from a plethora of point of views. So you hear actors talking about certain things and how they got over the hurdle, but you would also hear a director's point of view on that same topic, or a producer, or an executive producer, or a showrunner, or a talent manager, or a talent agent. So we really had everybody, every way you could look at a certain topic, we had that. And had the president of the Screen Actors Guild at the time. I had the president of the Directors Guild of America. You had about 5 or 6 people that sit on their various boards, all teach this program. So Richie, the program, about 5 years ago when we released it, was a DVD program. And the idea behind that was, well, hey, this isn't just for people living in LA or Hollywood, because actors do come out here, but actors start everywhere. It doesn't matter what city you're living in. When you get the bug or the idea that you want to participate in this, you could be living in Pea Ridge, Arkansas, but you need the information, and it's helpful to have it before you start. So we decided it should be portable, and it came out on DVD. Anyway, it came up, we were doing really well, but I had to stop because I had some projects I was working on. I shut the company down. Anyway, we're just coming back up. Hopefully within another month, it'll be up. It'll be on the internet. It'll be a website called theactorsjourney.com, and it'll have the entire program there as streaming media. So I like the idea that it's not DVDs, because that actually was very labor intensive for me on the company side. We're streaming media. You do all the work up front, and then you can just, purchase it and watch it. But it covers, like I say, in these 65 topics. We've got 3 different programs. If somebody wants to buy the entire program, 10-hour version, they can buy that. There's an intermediate one for people that aren't quite as committed or sure, and you can buy, it's broken down into 8 volumes or 8 parts. The 10 hours are broken into 8 parts, and you can buy any one of the volumes. Should watch them in order, but you can start off it's much cheaper, like $25-$30 to do that. And then the third program we have is the segments. We'll have all 65 segments up there, and if you just want to see what it's about, or just stick your toe into the water and watch a couple of those, they'll be available for a couple bucks each, whatever, $3 to $5. And you can either go through the program that way as finances or time permits, or you could jump to a volume, and it's less expensive, of course, to do it that way. And if you buy the whole thing, that's probably the least expensive way to do it, but you got to buy the whole thing.
I think it's a fantastic project. Yeah.
Yeah, so when you get to the website, there's a list of all the people, that are in it, so you can find out who it is. There'll be a free segment. There's a place where we have YouTube clips. So actually you can see some of it right now. I put up about 25 clips with the various people who are in it.
I did watch the clips this week, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, it's amazing. People, stepped up to the plate for us. So I'm very, very proud of it. And if that sort of supersedes my contribution to the industry instead of my 2 cents, that's okay with me. I mean, my 2 cents entertain people, but I feel this is, of the utmost usefulness to anybody attempting to become an actor, because, for literally, if you can sit there for 10 hours, the next day you can, go to the business and do the whole thing with confidence that you know what you're doing.
Well, I do want to ask about one little cute thing that you appeared in, which I thought was a lot of fun. The Antiquities, a Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser story. How did that come out, and how much fun was it for you?
It was a lot of fun. Actually, the guy that directed it and starred in it was named Mike Celestino, and he's got a partner named Robert Guerin. Who these guys are, as I told you briefly, I did a Cinerama film back in
Right.
2012. And they were the two guys that approached us about doing a documentary about making this Cinerama film. So, you know, it was the first Cinerama film made in whatever it was, 50, 60 years. And they shot a documentary, interviewed everybody, including the director, Dave Strohmeyer, who's the go-to anything having to do with Cinerama. He's your guy, and he's the guy that actually restored all the prints, literally restored them, hand restored them. But yeah, they did this amazing 30-minute long documentary about the trials and tribulations of, you know, making this particular piece. And, you know, the camera, just moving that around was a daunting thing. It's the size of a phone booth and, you know, weigh 300 pounds and runs off of, I don't know, like 12 car batteries or something. It was like insane. And the documentary came out really well. In fact, we showed the documentary just prior to showing In the Picture, and they got rave reviews too. And everybody that's seen it's been entered in a couple film festivals and did really well. People are very interested in what Cinerama was. And it's got a little bit of history in there, but it, you know, if you're going to watch In the Picture, it really kind of clues you into what we went through just to get this little film made. It was like, oh my God. Anyway, so Mike and Robert had done that. So I hadn't talked to them in a while. And out of the clear blue, Mike called me up and said, hey, I'm doing these Star Wars affiliated films. And you know, there's this one character we thought maybe you could do it. And I'm like, well, I don't really act anymore. And he's like, well, you look perfect. And, you know, maybe would you consider saying, well, I'll tell you what, send me the script over. And I got it and I looked at it and I was like, yeah, I should do this. I mean, these guys, you know, they stepped up to the plate and did that documentary. I kind of owe them. So I called him back, said, yeah, I'll do it. So, and then as soon as I hung up the phone, I kind of looked at the script again. I'm like, God, I got all these lines. How the hell am I going to remember this? I haven't had to remember anything, you know. I don't know. Hopefully I can remember. Well, anyway, the shoot was 2 months off. So I just started working on the script right away. And you know, about a week later, I had it completely memorized. So I guess once you have the facility to remember things, which that's what I did for a living. You know, every night I'd go home, remember 10 pages of dialogue, go to the soundstage, shoot it, forget it, and then learn 10 more pages for the next day. I did that for 12 years. So I guess that mechanism in my brain was still working. So yeah, we shot it. And, you know, when I saw the final product, I thought it was pretty cool. And
It was fun.
I'm kind of a grizzly looking old, you know, guy that like the, I guess a 2018 or 2020, whenever we shot 2020 version of Gabby Hayes or something. And I guess I got blasted away by a laser beam at the end, that was cool. I haven't been killed on film in a long time.
Well, you're currently very involved with art, and you have a site, StanleyLivingstonArt.com. When did you first start wanting to do that? And tell us about your work.
Okay, yeah. Well, the artwork came about when I was doing my three sons. You know, I'm have a job where you can't really make a lot of noise, and so when I guess I was about 13, 14, I bought an electric guitar. So I got banished off the sound stage to the other stage next door where I could plug my amp in and rock out and nobody could hear me. And it was at that time too, I have drawn and painted since the time I was a kid. I kind of started painting again. And more so probably even in my 20s and 30s. I painted most of the stuff that I painted. So the artwork that you see on my StanleyLivingstonArt.com, I put it up there. And what I did is, you know, I used to either sell the paintings back then or give them away, but I always took high-res pictures of them in case I ever wanted to syndicate it. And I guess about 3 years ago, I decided, you know, I should do something with all these, you know, art pieces I have, because you take the high-res version of it, and you can have a very high-end print made from it. So I started doing that and built the website and put up about 50, 60 of the pieces that I had completed, over a span of 20 years. And yeah, they're great. I've got a printer up in Vancouver, Canada. It's like totally amazing. That was the problem at first. I wanted to do this, and I couldn't find a good printer in LA. You'd give the digital image to them, and you don't want to make a mistake because the paper that these things are being printed on, even the small one is like $80 just for a blank sheet of paper, and the bigger ones can run, $180 for a sheet of paper. It's
Oh my.
high-end German Hahnemühle textured paper. So yeah, it's museum quality paper, and so you got to be sure what you're doing is correct. And I got a couple of those back here. I was so disappointed. The colors didn't match. It was like they must have had a blind guy printing it or something. I was like, what is this? This doesn't match. And anyway, somebody told me about these people in Canada, and I thought, well, let me do another test. I'm going to give this guy the hardest one I have to reproduce, which is this color. It's like a violet blue. And if you don't know what you're doing, it just comes out gray blue. Kind of a sickening gray blue, actually. Kind of like the color of the My Three Sons, the middle legs behind you. And it's supposed to be vibrant, like in your face. So I gave it to them and got the print about a week, two later. And I was blown away. The colors were exact. So I sent them another thing that I had that kind of had a lot of colors and, kind of fulfilled the whole color spectrum. And each color came back. I was just blown away. I go, okay, you guys are my printers. So they have all my files. And when somebody orders off the internet, I turn around, I order it from this guy. It takes about a week or two for me to get it. I take it out, inspect it, and then I sign and number it, put it back in the tube, and mail it off to whoever's buying it. I don't deal with frames because there's no point in that. Everybody wants a different frame. So, and it's, if you're mailing it in a frame where it's matted with glass, it'll cost hundreds of dollars to ship. It just weighs too much. So, yeah, it's just easier for me. People buy the art and, you frame it however you see
Do
fit.
what they want.
Yeah, I don't want to put it in like a chrome frame. If this guy gets it, he's got a Western style house with cowboy gear. He's not going to want that. And I have some paintings that would fit into that environment where, they're kind of, actually one of them is up where we shot How the West Is Won. I had shot some pictures there when I was a kid. And so I went back and reshot them probably when I was in my 20s or 30s, called the Alabama Hills. And yeah, I mean, it's just, boulders, cactuses, all kinds of stuff. So that fits in. But, it runs the gamut. I do everything from, still life. I do abstracts. But if you've been there, you see what I do. It's all kinds.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic.
Stuff, whatever. I don't want to call myself Rembrandt, but like Rembrandt Jr. or something.
Well, looking back at My Three Sons, I mean, it's still routinely named as one of the best sitcoms of all time. So do you often do you watch it back at all in the old episodes? And what goes through your mind when you do?
No, occasionally. I think maybe in the last year I watched a couple, but I never even really watched it when it was on. I don't know, I just never really liked watching myself on TV. And the particular episode that is my favorite episode doesn't star Fred, doesn't star Mike, Robbie, or Chip. Stars Tramp. I think it is the best episode ever created for, well, at least for My Three Sons. It was very clever. And for a TV show that's supposed to be a light comedy, it's a nail biter. It is one of the scariest shows I think I've ever seen on TV. The storyline is Tramp, he goes out of the house and goes around the neighborhood meeting female dogs and doing what dogs do. And one day he goes to a construction site that's underway. They're building a community there, and they're, grading the hills. And he picks up a stick of dynamite. It's the percussive dynamite, so you don't even need to light a match. You just need to hit it with something. And he brings it home and into the house. And the whole episode is this stick of dynamite with Tramp being put in different places, and it rolls down the stairs but doesn't go off, gets put into the laundry chute. I mean, The whole Douglas house should have been, along with the city block, should have been blown up, but it wasn't. But I thought, what a great idea. Just, a show starring the dog. And it really, once you start watching it, it captivates. You want to see how it turned out. And it's so scary because, this dynamite could blow up at any second. So, yeah, that's my favorite show, my favorite episode out of it.
Well, do you do many fan conventions? And if so, where are you appearing next?
Yeah, I would like to do them. I don't know who to call or who to get in contact with. So anybody out there wants to get a show, you guys can pass along my information if they get a hold of you or refer them to me.
I can pass you information of some that do it. Yes, I'll send it to you.
Yeah. Well, I know they do these Comic-Cons, and I know that it's not just about comic book people anymore. They're doing, what do they call it? Classic TV people. But, I've been so busy, I'd never put the time or effort into, trying to run down a booking agent or an agent that books those things. So they just come to me as they come to me. I'm going to be doing one actually in about 2 weeks up in San Jose with John Provost. Barry and I are going up there. I think it's just a small show. And then in the beginning of October, I think it's the 6th and 7th, we're doing the Hollywood show in Burbank. A guy named Dave Elkaby is the owner of that show. And it's a big show. It's, I think, a Friday from 5 in the afternoon to about 11 o'clock at night. And then all day Saturday. They used to do Sundays. They don't seem to do that anymore. But they have over 100 celebrities there, and they get a big crowd. And then the granddaddy of them all is the Chiller Show in New Jersey, Parsippany, New Jersey. Kevin Clement owns that show, and yeah, he's a great guy. Anyway, Barry and I we've done that, all the way back to about 2010 or 12. Every 4 or 5 years we'll do. I haven't been there like 10 years this time just because of work, but we're going to be doing that. I think it's the 27th to the 30th, something like that of October. So that should be fun. But that gets, oh my God, it's probably like 10,000 people come to that thing. It's crazy. And then it's kind of Halloween themed. It used to be just for horror films and sci-fi, but since 2012, they've had everybody from every show there, and it's great. People will, on Saturday night, I'll dress up for Halloween, even if it's not on Halloween. They have a big party there. They have a lot of big, rock people there, and they play with Kevin. I assume Kevin's still playing, but they put a show together, and you wouldn't believe some of the musical people they get in addition to actors. It's a great show.
Well, I hope you get to Florida. I hope you get to a Florida show. So
I only did one down there once. It was funny because the lady who did book me in those days, and Barry, brought us in. I guess it was Miami. I think it was Miami, or maybe can't remember, Boca Raton or something like that. And yeah, it was a pretty big show, but it wasn't really a celebrity-driven show. They had about maybe 5 or 6 different people from different shows there, and I think at the time we did, they had about 5 astronauts or 8 astronauts. That was kind of cool. I always wanted to meet them. But the show wasn't about us. It was a Beanie Baby show that we were invited to be there. I guess they figured, well, 10,000 people are coming to this thing to look at Beanie Babies. I didn't even know what a Beanie Baby was. So I got there, and we were there, and they had some really cool people. Jake LaMotta was there. I was like, wow, I don't believe I just met him. And astronauts, whatever. So yeah, they're kind of fun to do, and it's always nice to get away for a couple of days. So,
well, what are you working on next?
I'm working on The Actor's Journey as we speak. As soon as we hang up, I got my editing machine right here. I'm doing some work on revamping. Well, like I said, we're selling it as volumes, so those are done. I'm about halfway through the actual segments, the 65 segments. I kind of wanted to refresh and update stuff. I'll do that from time to time. And so I'm hoping to be done with this. Gosh, what is today? Yeah, by the end of the week, I'd say I'll be done, and then it'll be going up to the internet after that. I've got the website already built, but it's offline. So it's just a matter of linking the two up and doing my work, and then I get to go out there and promote it. That's what I'll be doing.
Well,
I guess for the rest
we'll get all the
life.
information from you, so we'll put all the links in when we post this.
Yeah, that'd be great. Or actually, if you want to do a show around that, I've got probably even better stories.
Oh,
about
absolutely.
Some of the people that are in that are like really, totally amazing. A couple of my friends who appeared in that were really had some interesting background. I guess you guys probably know who Danny Trejo is.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, he's in it, and some of his stories are pretty wild, but they serve a purpose. They serve a point because of actors, not really knowing where actors come from or how they get involved in the business. And although we're all heading in the same direction, everybody takes a different path. And,
sure,
this sort of proves it, how, people got involved in the entertainment industry and became, pretty highly recognizable, if not bona fide stars, that by doing certain things and acting on impulse and, learning how it all works. So, yeah.
Oh, we'd love to discuss that with you when you're ready to do that.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, how can fans follow you on social media?
Well, I have, if you go to, I guess, my Facebook account, I have a Facebook account. Actually, I have 4 of them. So pick any one you want. I post on all of them. So there's about 20,000 people that I post to. And I put up a lot of stuff from my 3 sons and offbeat pictures, behind the scene pictures. Same thing with some of the movies that I've been in. I'll, occasionally drop some of those in. Occasionally I drop something from my real life, like we were just at the Indy 500. So I had some Indy 500 stuff there because I went with, it used to be a bunch of us went, John Provost, Tony Dow, Tim Considine. Anyway, we called ourselves the Dirty Dozen. We're down to about a dirty half dozen now. Seems to be our dates are expiring. You know what I mean? So, it's kind of crazy how that's going on. But yeah, I try to, work on it. Maybe every couple of days I'll put something up. And then I've got my production company has a website. If somebody wants to see what my other part of my life besides the actor's journey is, it's firstteamproductions.com. You can go see what we've worked on and what we're working on. And then I have the art website. So, usually once a week.
We're going to post all the links. You have your art website, your personal website, I see. Yes.
Yep. And the production is firstteamproductions.com. So people can keep up with the production stuff that I'm on. And soon to be, hopefully within the next month, theactorsjourney.com. But for now, you can go to YouTube and type in the Actors Journey channel. And we'll pop in. And if you want to see what we're doing there and who's involved, I think you'll be impressed.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you again so much for joining us. It was such a pleasure to get to talk to you. And yes, we'd absolutely love to have you back to discuss the other, but it was a big treat to get to speak with you today. So thank you again.
I appreciate you guys having me on. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Ike. It's been good chatting with you guys. And send me a link and I'll,
Oh, I absolutely will. As soon as we post this.
Facebook. I also put it on that website and I archive all the shows there. So if there's a place to get back to it, I will definitely do that.
We will 100% do it. But thank you again. This has been Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen with Ike Eisenmann. And again, a very special thanks to Stanley Livingston. And please subscribe.
Thank you for listening to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast.